No, Jake. Helter Skelter podcast, episode 2, fireside chat marker.
Helter Shelter.
What did I say?
Skelter.
What he said.
Beatles.
Only Shelter.
Yeah. Charles Manson Fan Club.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Episode 2.
Good to go, Jimmy. Welcome to the Helter Shelter podcast, episode number 2. We are here out in the jungle.
Fireside chat today.
Fireside chat. My name's Jake Van Haverbeck. This is my good friend and compadre Tyler Smith, broker record for Homesmiths Real Estate. And this is our good friend.
Our special guest. 20 plus years in the design and construction business. Helped numerous contractors' families with umpteenth projects, accessory units, commercial builds. I mean, you've pretty much done everything. I mean, our paths have crossed for 20 years. Someone will say, we're showing up to do some due diligence at this site, and we're bringing our designer. And I see the big, beautiful beard coming across the parking lot, and say, "Oh, well, this is great." So, Clinton time's always good time. So we're super happy to have you here.
Super happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for joining us,
Mr. Clinton Edwards. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as Tyler said, I've been in this industry for probably way more than 20 years. I mean, I grew up on job sites. My parents used to build houses and then flip them. And then over my years of being in university, I actually had a job working at the Home Hardware in Bowmanville doing kitchen design. That's where I really fell in love with the design end of things. I should have known then that's what I wanted to do when I grow up, but I ended up finishing up my university. I actually started my own general contracting business, did that for a little while before I got headhunted, did some project management, and built some brand new houses. And at that point, the people that I was working with realized, hey, you know how to do design. Why are you doing this stuff with the project management stuff? You should be working on the design end of it. And gave me an opportunity to challenge all the exams that I needed to, get my qualifications. And now for the last 8 plus years now, I've been running Home Drafting and Design, which focuses on working a lot with real estate investors. We do a lot of stuff involving intensification, building additional units on existing residential properties, but we've also been involved in commercial projects, 20, 30, 50 unit builds that have been done, industrial builds, all sorts of fun stuff like that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the purpose of the chat today is we want to know about A.D.Us, additional dwelling units. And Tyler has some good questions about that. We were discussing it earlier. But I want to hear your spin on it. What is an A.D.U? Just for the people who don't know, if you can explain it to them so that we can start from there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a good question to ask because there's a lot of convoluted information around ADUs. Even the term ADU it's not outdated, but I mean, it keeps changing and ever evolving in this industry as we see Ontario legislation continue to change it. So the newest term that's out actually right now is ARU. So it's an additional residential unit. And so that encompasses not only what we're probably going to talk a lot about today, which is like more of like a garden suite or a laneway suite, but it also includes, basement apartments or top-ups with another unit. Essentially, an ARU is any unit that is not the primary unit on a residential property. So it can be, again, basement apartments have been a term that's been used, accessory apartments, secondary suites, garden suites, laneway suites, and they all apply as an ARU, but all have different functions depending on what it is on the property there and where they're located.
Right. We've talked about them quite frequently.
We're seeing a lot more. I mean, in Clarington and the Durham region, we're seeing them sort of pop up, and I would say more in the last 2 years. I'm starting to see more and more detached because you can see the detached from the street. I mean, the interior ones, you don't really know what's going on. But the reason we wanted to talk to you, you're obviously an expert in this, but we want to just, our people that are listening or watching, to understand the opportunities with ADUs or ARDUs and the recent change in legislation and how they could qualify for them. So I guess understanding what they are, but giving our sort of local demographic an idea, so let's call it Clarington or Durham, how do they qualify for them? What's the zoning that's required, and how many or what the different configurations are. So that would be really, I think a lot of people are really curious about these for a number of reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the climate has changed, we've seen bills come out like C108, 109, which were very much focused on the idea of being able to add an additional unit on all residential properties. I mean, go back about 8 years ago, you'd only be able to do it if it was a detached dwelling and it had the right parking and it had to be just the right situation to even put a basement apartment in. Now with Bill C-23, we're allowed to have up to 3 units on a residential property, and that could be in several different configurations. And then some municipalities have taken it even farther, right? The challenge with Ontario legislation is, they come down with a bill that says this is what you're allowed to do, and then every municipality has to implement it the way they want to.
Right.
So they're forced to have to allow in a residential zoning at least 3 units. So the municipality will decide whether that's 3 in one building or if that's 2 in one building and 1 in the backyard. Some municipalities have even got to the stage where they'll allow 2 in the accessory building, which is rare. You don't really
I
see
think
that.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's essentially your primary house and then a detached duplex behind the house.
100%. Yeah. If you don't want necessarily, like my wife, God love her, she's totally on board with the idea of having a rental income, but she never wanted anyone to live underneath it, right? It's like, I can't do that.
What are
I've
they
got kids in
cooking?
the house.
What does that smell?
Yeah. Could you imagine the kids are going to stomp all over the floor? No, I can't have
right.
that, right? So the idea of having a separate detached structure or even having them living behind us, she'd be okay with that. But the idea of having directly underneath us was just a total no-go.
Yeah.
So this now allows for us to be able to not only change the configuration within the existing structure. I mean, for so many years, I think when people think about an accessory apartment in a house, they think basement apartment. But I do a bunch in Kingston where we're actually topping the structure up. The basement doesn't allow for it, so we add a second story onto it. Or we
Or
add
on
an
grade,
addition off the back.
on grade behind it. Or,
Yeah.
Right.
So we have one project we're just finishing up right now, exactly that. So the real estate investor is very much focused on the idea of doing student rentals. So they wanted to actually add an addition off the back. So it's only about a 900 square foot build. They wanted to add almost double the amount of square footage at the back. That way they can have 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms for it. So you've got lots of students, there's lots of bathrooms, there's lots of ability for everybody to utilize all the facilities. Let's be honest, none of them are in the kitchen or the living room. They're all in their bedrooms or in the bathroom, right? And then we just top that up. So essentially we've created an 8-bedroom structure. So 8, bedrooms for all the students and, 4 bathrooms that they can all utilize, right? So,
Wow.
yeah.
This is to both you. I've seen it a couple times. To me, it seems like a great way to get into the market for people younger, 25 and up or whatever. Because what I've seen quite frequently is, they're buying it with, say, their parents, and their parents are moving into the A.D.U. because they want to downsize anyways, and then the kids are in the house. Where, are there benefits to that? What,
I think so. It's well publicized that there's a housing crisis on one level, and that it's very hard for people to get into the market now. So for young people, which was something we touched on a previous podcast. So exactly that. If you don't have the down payment or are not or being qualified for the bank, and you have parents that have a nice sized lot, and you come up with a site plan that really works well, the parents stay in their old 70s bungalow, and we build something in the back for them. It gets the kids into the market. They both can, live in harmony on one property, not, butting heads. And it's kind of a win-win. And sometimes, like you say, you'll see the parents move into the A.D.U., which is smaller sometimes. And then the young family moves into the family home. So I think there's a huge opportunity, but you could speak to that. Are you seeing, outside of investors, are you seeing families capitalize on these programs?
Oh, 100%. It's basically the microcosm of the 1950s family compound, right?
Right.
As opposed to having acres of property where everybody has their own separate house, you've got, an infill lot where you've got 2 separate dwellings on it. So yeah, 100%. In most cases, very similar to what you're saying there, Tyler, my experience has been a lot of the clients who are not real estate investors are usually older couples. They've got some money. They've got kids that could never afford to be in a house on their own. They need more space. The kids need the bigger house because they've got a bunch of kids running around themselves, and the parents are usually downsizing. They're getting to a point where they don't need all the extra space, so they can build something that's modest in the backyard, anywhere between 6 to 1,000 square feet, and have a bedroom or two out there, and have some living space, be able to entertain their kids. Hopefully watch the grandkids. Got to love those, built-in babysitters, right?
That's it, right? That's it.
But it keeps everybody together on one lot, and then it also offers the opportunity for legacy as well, too, right? If you get them on title as well, too, there's some things that you can look at as far as how you avoid certain taxes.
Yeah,
and stuff
some
like that,
estate
too.
planning, which is part of it too, is that they're all on title. You have 4 people on title and as joint tenants. So when the parents pass, now the kids that are in one of the 2 units have the ability to rent that unit or continue passing the living opportunity on to their kids. So it's generational for sure. I think the program is amazing. And everyone can see that it's getting momentum. Now, the reason why someone like you is important and part of the housing crisis, or this, we're seeing the housing starts very, very low, is people being held hostage by process and red tape and cost to get buildings out of the ground. So for those who don't know, if you have a piece of land, you have to pay developmental levies, which are very expensive. In our area, it's regional and municipal levies to get a building permit. Now, walk us through, if you have an established home they've already paid levies in 1976, so you're not paying levies, how does it work for the permitting process, cost-wise, constructing the A.D.U. on an existing property with an existing primary residence?
That's a good question. So I will say this. It's not to say that you're completely absolved from any development charges, because that's something to keep in mind as well, too. So the purpose of the development charges are to cover the cost of roadways, sanitary and sewer, school board stuff, and stuff with the region, right? Infrastructure in general, right? So what the municipalities have done is anytime that there's an ARU or an A.D.U. or however you want to call it, they will eliminate their charges, but the school board still charges theirs. So my experience has been, if you build a brand new structure like an ARU in the backyard, you won't pay the, what is it, Joshua, 120,000 or something like that?
It's astronomical.
Yeah, it's anywhere between like 70 to 120,000 depending on the municipality that you're in the region. And but when you're actually building an ARU, you're only looking at about $7,000 because it's just the student fees, right? The school board stuff.
Right.
So that's huge, because the other infrastructure is already there. You've already got your sewer and the roads. I mean, none of that's changing. Everything that's changing is really changing on the property itself.
Not to get too technical, but so again, when you develop a piece of land, you pay for your levies and your connection fees to things like city sewer and water and things like that, which is not cheap either, connecting to the primary house. Now, how does it work? Do you piggyback from the primary house to the A.D.U. for things like water, sewer, or are there separate service lines for those?
So again, this is an ever-evolving landscape, and I wish it was like a straight answer that I could give you, because it changes. So my experience has been in the region of Durham. The region doesn't want you to have a second meter. So if it's water line, it has to come through the main house and then out to the ARU.
Okay.
So usually, let's be honest, most time the water line is only about 5/8 of an inch thick. You're probably going to have to go to a 3/4 or a 1 inch to be able to supply everything, depending on what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So that has to be run into the main house, and then from there it gets run out to the ARU. Alternatively, when it comes to the sewage, they don't want sewage to run through the house. They want it to actually run around and connect right to the sanitary at the road. So usually, right where you hit the property line, they'll expect a Y and then some sort of clean out, so that way it doesn't back up into the existing structure. Now, I say that, and then I have projects like I've done in Scarborough, where all of a sudden they're like, nah, sure, whatever, just put a clean out just before you go into the house and run it right through the whole building.
Right.
So
Bash through the exterior wall and away you go.
pretty much, yeah. It's wild. So.
Not just while it's on my brain. What are the restrictions? Because you said compound earlier, right? Talking about the old 50s compound. What are does it change regionally, the restrictions, obviously, with site plan and all that? Because you obviously, you build 3 units. Well, how big does that have? How big can they be? You don't want them towering.
I'm
thinking
assuming
of
its
places
percentage lot coverage still is. I think what you're trying to ask is, the minimum maximum build for the ADU. So if you have
Yeah.
a lot that's X, is it still done by lot coverage?
You guys got 6 hours for this question?
Yep.
So,
Put another log on.
yeah. So that's it. That one will still be on there.
That
6
night
hours
log's
later.
probably going to take us into
You
the
can't
morning.
zoom in,
Yeah.
but I put half a tree on the fire. Sorry.
No, so I mean, again, there's Ontario regulations from Bill C-23 that says how many units you can put on, but then every municipality has their own regulations on what the zoning bylaws say you're allowed to build. So a couple years back, when Bill C-23 came out, everybody, other than Clarington, I don't know why Clarington was ahead of the game on this one, but everybody else just basically took their accessory building bylaws and just applied it to accessory buildings
Right.
when it came to, ARUs. So usually that was, up to a maximum of 8% lot coverage. That was less than 50% of your existing structure, or up to 60 square meters, no matter what. That was kind of the three restrictions. Whatever the first one was that you hit, that was your limiting factor, unless you wanted to get into a minor variance. So basically, every one that I've done has pretty much needed a minor variance
Right.
because
Right.
of that. Clarington was a little bit different. Clarington was a lot different, actually. So they changed the entire thing to have a whole separate bylaw around it. So it was an A.D.U bylaw. So instead of it being like a garage where you could be 2 feet off the property line, it had to be at least 1.8 meters off the property line. Instead of it being 8% coverage, it was 10% coverage. Instead of you having to be less than 50%, you just had to be smaller than the primary house, which was a huge godsend for me. One of the first ones I did in Bowmanville was right on 36 Simpson, and we had about a little over 900 square foot bungalow that was there. And because they wrote the bylaw as it had to be smaller than the house, not smaller than the primary dwelling, we actually built basically almost the exact same house behind it.
Right.
So we had this 900 square foot wartime house and then another 900 square foot house behind it. This one, the primary, we changed into 2 units. So now technically the primary unit's about
Is it
950 square
duplex?
feet. It's essentially, yeah.
Yeah, 2 units.
2 units in it. And then at the back, we designed it the exact same way, so it had a staircase that it could be divided, but of course the bylaws don't allow it yet. So they have a 4-bedroom ARU that's twice the size of the primary unit because
Right.
it's based on the size of the house, not on the size of
But
the unit.
completely legal and adhering to the code.
100%, yeah. So we've done it in such a way that when we actually did the original permit, I already put in all the fire separations because I'm looking to the future that eventually they're going to allow us to do 2
Legislation's gonna
units.
change and you're like,
yeah,
oh.
slap up a wall, put it in the kitchen, you got 2 units in the back.
Yeah.
Now it's a 4-unit property, right?
Yeah.
Highest and best use, right? So
How hard can it be?
Now, having said that, now I can see how, part of the population, and this is for anything, development-wise or real estate-wise, part of the population is very excited about ARU opportunities. There's another part of the population, which you can speak to, that probably pushes back on them. What's been your experience with the public, not the perception, but the public's opinion on these projects?
yeah, I mean, it really depends on the neighborhood that you're in. I've had some municipalities and some neighborhoods that are really on board with it. I mean, obviously, I've never had any pushback from an investor. They're always happy that this is happening. A lot of homeowners that are, again, looking at trying to bring their family onto the same property, no problem. There was one property I will not mention here in Bowmanville, just because it would probably cause me some grief. It was in a very well-developed neighborhood with a lot of single detached homes, and the properties were all oversized. So the proposal was to make a severance of the property, and because the zoning actually allowed for semi-detached, we were actually looking at building semi-detached with 3 units in each. So again, property that a single detached home that really, it's just one family living in there, we had the potential of changing it into essentially a 6-plex, right? Two triplexes, I guess, technically. Not well received at all. Not well, like the neighborhood was, I mean, you go from living in a well-developed neighborhood with a lot of older people that have
Right.
lived there all of their lives, and then all of a sudden someone's gonna build an apartment building beside us? Hell no, they were not on board with that idea at all. So there is some pushback that we get, but it depends on, I think, more the level at which we're trying to intensify. I mean, let's be honest, people are creatures of habit. They don't like change, especially if you've been well established in a neighborhood. I find that as you get farther and farther towards Toronto, there's a little bit more receptivity to that idea. Even the idea of doing these in rural applications are much more, they're much more accepted. But yeah, I find that as we start getting farther towards Clarington and into even Cobourg and Port Hope, it's not as well received.
Right. Do you think the fear is, now keep in mind, those people that are pushing back paid $75,000 for their home in 1986, so they're not really relating to the affordability problems that someone's having in 2026. So I can see where they might think that this is going to affect their property value, and it might be an eyesore. But the ones I've seen are actually quite attractive, and the elevations that I was sent from you guys, they look great. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is, a lot of people talk to us about doing these projects, but there's a fear factor, or they're sort of intimidated by the whole process, which is when, I recommend someone like you. So tell us how, if an investor or a homeowner comes to you and says, we know nothing about ADUs other than we want one, how does the process work when they engage with you?
Yeah. So, it depends on the level of intensity that they want to do, right? Obviously, we usually start by meeting on site, having a discussion about what it is that they want to accomplish. Do you want just one unit additional? Is this for a family member? Is this because you're trying to, maximize rents? Is it, I can only afford this if I have X amount of people paying as well too? We have that discussion first. We take a look at, obviously, the zoning requirements for the property. And we talked a little bit about that before, right? So every property is going to be zone specific. Every property is going to be zoned based on the municipality that's in. So an R1 zoning in Oshawa might have different requirements than an R1 zoning in say, Clarington, right? So that's something that we have to look at. And again, even the bylaws relating to an accessory unit in the backyard are different. Clarington has very specific ones. Most other municipalities are utilizing a very simplistic one that they already had designed for accessory buildings to begin with. So those are all things that we have to look at as factors. The other question is, how much do they want to spend? That's another big question, right? Obviously, way cheaper to put an accessory unit in an existing structure. If you've got a house, to put one in a basement, even to top it up is going to be cheaper than putting in a whole new foundation, whole new wall structure, whole new everything out back, right? So these are all things to consider. Even hooking up sewer and sanitary is another thing, right? If it's already in the building, it's way easier to connect it than it is to run something totally separate. It involves excavation.
And less intrusive on the lot in general, right? Excavation-wise, pulling down trees, et cetera, to build on the existing structure.
100%, yeah, absolutely. Now, there are factors to consider there, too. If you're a real estate investor and you've got people living in an upstairs and downstairs unit, you want to put a third unit in that building, well, putting something on top of it, you're going to disturb everybody. Putting a unit in the backyard, you don't really have to disturb anybody's life here. They can continue on just status quo while you're doing the work that's back there.
So you've met this interested party. They give you sort of their wish list. This is for my daughter and her child, and we wanted to have this aesthetic, and it needs to match the house. Again, they don't want to go through the permitting process, the design process, and you mentioned minor variances, which if anyone's had any experience with minor variances, it has to go to a committee, it has to be voted on. But speak to us about, I'm just trying to get people to understand the value out of using someone like you on multiple levels. So maybe just speak to how you can expedite these.
Yeah, we have made it a business out of doing all the stuff nobody wants to do. That's basically, when I started this, I started in the design end of it, but the whole goal was to help people from where they're at right now, right through the point where a baton can be handed off to a contractor and they can just, go nuts. Because nobody likes dealing with the city. I don't know why. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. I enjoy it, right? I enjoy all this aspect of it. But
you like a challenge.
I do like a challenge. I think is it Mandarin or Cantonese where the same word for a crisis is the same word for opportunity, right? So that's I built my entire business on that model. So we spend a lot of time working with the client to design what it is that they want based on the parameters that they're allowed. Obviously, the path of least resistance is always the easiest. So if designing something that's 60 square meters is going to avoid minor variances, that might be the best way to go. And then how do we get around the requirements? Because people sometimes think, oh, I got to build 60 square meters. I'm limited. Put a basement in. You're already excavating. Let's double
Right.
the amount of square footage if that's what you're limited to. We did that actually in the first ARU in Whitby that we did. It was the first one that was ever permitted as a garden suite in Whitby. It was really cool to be the first permit like that. And that's exactly what we did. We were limited to 60 square meters. We're like, screw it. We're going to go and put a basement in it.
Double it.
Yeah. Turned it into like a 3-bedroom house with, 3 baths in it. So why not? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we look at all those factors, what it is that they're looking to accomplish, how we can accomplish that within the confines. If we can't fit the confines, we go for minor variances. My experience with minor variances is everybody gets scared of them. They do take a little bit longer, but they're not the end of the world. And in fact, like I said, in a lot of cases with ARUs, you're pretty much restricted to do that. The zoning bylaws were designed for garages. They weren't designed for living
Right.
spaces, right? So, a 20 by 30 garage, sure, that's great. A 20 by 30 living space, it's tight.
Don't you feel that the municipalities, they want density, right? And they're limited on density due to servicing or whatever else, or cost to build. So when it comes to a minor variance, do you feel that they're already supportive and they're much more reasonable based on the demand for density?
So far, I have yet to have the planning department not be supportive of what I'm
Right.
planning. The only time, I shouldn't say it, there's one time, it was Oshawa. The guy wanted to go up and build a second story, and Oshawa is about the only place I've ever experienced where they're really not keen on that second story. Again, they got a lot of wartime bungalows, and they
Right.
don't want this
Like a
structure
height
that's gonna-
restriction
Exactly.
towering over the...
Exactly.
Right.
Now, that being said, I've also done an Ajax where we built something that essentially is a triplex. I mean, it's not a triplex. I didn't say it was a triplex. We designed it in such a way that, we've got 3 bathrooms stacked on top of each other. It's a basement, a main floor, and a second floor. This guy has designed it in such a way that very easily it could be split out whenever we get to that stage where the zoning bylaws will allow it. But, yeah. They had no problem with us going 2 stories. Absolutely, we exceeded the 60 square meters. We exceeded the side yard setback. We exceeded the amount of area of the building itself. I don't know if I would have called that minor in nature, but again, we still got it passed. So,
But for the average homeowner, they are intimidated by, taking plans into a plans examiner or getting permits or having to quarterback this stuff. So this is why someone like you is such high value, because you can potentially go from concept with these people to putting a bow on their ADU. I mean, you're totally vertically integrated. You can manage the construction. You have basically everything is a one-stop shop with you. Am I right?
absolutely. So whether, they're asking for stormwater management or, erosion sediment control plans, topographical surveys, I mean, these are all things that can come up, and we take care of all that stuff. Like, at no point should my clients ever have to interact with the city unless they want to. The whole goal is, like I said, to get them from where they are right now to the point where they've got a permit, they can just go and do what they got to do.
Right. And I think another big value add with you is that, from conception to it being completed, if you're doing it on your own, I know I've done projects, and just with it not having the experience, it's taken much, much longer. So would you say that you could probably complete from start to finish much faster and much more efficient than someone trying to do it on their own?
I'd like to think so, or else I'm in the wrong business. No, absolutely. I find that there's a lot of times where, let's be honest, if anybody's had any interaction with the municipality, you've probably had this experience where you go there, you bring them a bunch of information, they go, that's great, now get us all of this. And then
Right.
you have to go and get all that paperwork together, and then you bring it back and they go, that's great, cool, now get us this. And it's without knowing those steps are going to be coming. Whenever we're engaged in, let's say, like a planning act with the minor variance, I'm already prepared for the fact that they're going to ask me for a topo, they're going to ask me for a grading plan, they're going to ask me for stormwater management. Let's just go and get that stuff, so we've got it. And so we're already prepared. Because again, the other thing too is Ontario legislation says if you bring a package into the building department and you put it before them, they're supposed to have 10 business days to respond back to you if it's a complete package. So what happens when they go, oh, you missed one document? Well, then
Right.
guess what? That time doesn't apply anymore, right? So
Yeah. This is what I'm saying. I think people get exhausted by the process, and sometimes throw in the towel or just don't start the journey because, they've heard so many terrible stories about dealing with building departments and building inspectors and things like that. But that's why I always encourage people to assemble your team. This is kind of an ongoing theme with us, but someone like you who can streamline the process and make it so much less stressful for them. The other question I had is from a financing or bank perspective, how does it work if if an ADU is $300,000 and you don't have that cash? How do they finance these things?
This is a great question. So this is one thing that has come up recently. We've been putting together, as you mentioned, teams. Teams are so vital in this whole process. So I work with a couple of different contractors. One, Enzo from
Right.
Southfield Construction. Shout out to you,
Fantastic
Enzo.
guy to work with.
Yep. We actually have been working on developing 3 different models of ARUs for this very purpose, so that we can already have it streamlined. We're getting them pre-approved by the municipality of Clarington, City of Kawartha Lakes, City of Oshawa. We're already trying to work on getting their pre-approved models so they streamline the process
Right.
through. We're also working on, we've already assembled the team of people who are mortgage brokers, and they specifically deal with this type of situation. So there is programs that are out there right now that will allow you to, as long as you have 15% of the capital to get started,
Okay.
they'll actually provide you with the mortgage to cover the cost of the construction, essentially a construction loan. But not only will they do that, they'll actually pre-approve the refinance at the end. So for years, if you've done real estate investment, you'd go into a project, you'd start working on it, you get it all done, and then you go to the bank and go, please let this get, $700,000, right? This, what they're doing is they look at the value of the house, they look at what you're putting into it, they look at what that should refinance for and already pre-approve you, so there's no guesswork.
Which is brilliant. I mean, as far as someone's anxiety or confidence, so, they'll give you the money up front for call it a construction loan, and they'll know based on the model that you've put together by the end of this, the whole package should be worth 1.2. So we'll finance, up to 80% of that. And now you're not paying, you just pay a standard mortgage on the primary residence and the ADU because you've combined that as one expense. Now, the benefit to that is you've got mom and dad and the son and their wife or whoever this is in the ADU, both contributing to the debt and overhead of the entire property, which again talks about this affordability and this housing crisis thing. It's a brilliant what you're doing. We'll call it, one of the models is the apple blossom model. You say, well, we've done 15 of these. We've got it down to a science. We're totally efficient with permitting, with costs. We know the cost to a nickel because we've done X amount of these. We already know that TD or whoever it is, has a great plan to finance these. At the end of it, you're going to be relinquished of this debt, and you're going to have something, a market mortgage on this project, and your property is going to be worth so much more. I can't see the negative.
I don't see a downside, right?
I don't see a downside.
The only thing that I find a bit of a struggle is it's sometimes to get the big banks on board with these ideas. They're not necessarily there. I don't
Right.
know if you had experienced it yourself when ARUs first came out. There was, the first couple of garden suites going out there. They had no idea how to properly figure out.
It's
the
like the
approval
square
of it.
peg and the round hole for them. They're like, we'll
Yeah.
just stick to townhouses.
Exactly. And then they started to look at the fact of more of almost like a CMHC perspective of, okay, well, let's base it on the amount of rents that are coming in. I mean,
Right.
if you've got these rents coming in, they're covering the mortgage. That makes sense. And even with this program that we're talking about, I haven't found it through an A lender yet, but the mortgage brokers that we're working with, they'll kind of create that bridge, and then once it gets to the point of refinancing, there's that potential of being able to get back with an A lender. But over that period where you're not with an A lender is always the scary part. People always think, oh my goodness, it's going to be high interest rates. I mean, I don't know what your
I
experience
don't think so. I mean, I think so. I understand what you're saying is the big 5 banks, they're not crazy about it, but there's all kinds of great credit unions that love this kind of thing, and their rates are not too far off or at par with the big banks, Kawartha Credit Union. There's a whole bunch of them. And then, of course, there's other private avenues as well.
And my experience with the privates have always been it's 10%, 12%, 15%. With this type of program, we're still only looking at 6%, which is great. I mean, it's kind of in that area where it's not crazy. You're just paying an interest-only loan at that point, right? Until you
Right.
get to the point where it's refinanced.
Are there any rebates Out of curiosity, with
Absolutely, there's
ADUs,
rebates.
ARUs?
I mean, we're building new construction right now, and as you know, our great Carney government has come up with the idea of an HST being removed. So that's one aspect, which is great on any kind of new construction. We have rebates as far as development charges that can come up as well too. And then, as I mentioned, because you're doing a secondary unit on the property, even if it's a new build, you're not paying full DCs on it as well too. Now, there's a whole other aspect of this, and I mean, I'm not going to hopefully go off on too much of a tangent, but on top of the things that I do with design, I actually own a company as well too, or partial owner of a company that does semi-modular builds. And what we're working on right now in the city of Kawartha Lakes is an affordable housing project. So the goal is to be able to sell 2-bedroom houses for $355,700, which is pretty darn good in comparison to what the market is right now. And the way that we're able to do that is we meet an affordable, attainable level. We have to be in the range where somebody who has an income, and I'll see if I get this right, the 60th percentile of the mean household income. So basically, you know, where the
You're losing our viewership right
Yeah,
now.
okay. So basically, anybody who's making less than $113,000 a year as a whole household, right?
Right.
That's kind of the 60th percentile, fall into this category. And if they do, then all the DCs are wiped. All the building permits are wiped. So like what would have cost, you know, hundreds of thousands, $100,000 at least in all the fees and levies to the city are just completely
Which
wiped.
can be, you know, based on the number, this could be a third of your budget, your construction budget, if
Heck
you're
yeah.
$350,000.
So, what's the timeline from, like, I want to get down to, someone wants to know, like, we've got Doug and Sally and we've walked them through the process. What's the timeline of saying they want to, I know it's dependent on what you're doing and how big of an ARU you're making or from that point, but what is a general timeline for these types of projects?
Yeah, great question. So from a paperwork standpoint, you know, you should anticipate it's going to be about 2 to 3 months. You know, you've got a couple weeks of preliminary drawings that have to be put together. There's usually some discussion. That is the one thing I cannot control, is the amount of input I get from clients, right? Sometimes that's, yeah, looks great, let's move on. And other times, let's start all over again. I don't like that. Or you get 3/4 of the way through and they change their minds, right? So usually a couple of weeks for that, usually a couple of weeks to put architectural drawings together, which show all the details, what need to be on there. We need HVAC drawings. Those can take about a week, but they can be done concurrently with any kind of engineering and stuff that's required. We're usually looking at a couple of weeks to put surveys and site plans and topographical stuff together, but that, again, can be done concurrently with having the design. As soon as we have the basic design of what they're looking at doing, we can have the surveyor out there. We can get them working on all that stuff, so it's rolling in behind to get all that stuff going.
Just to interject here, but with your pre-approved models, all of that lead time or waiting time for HVAC, for truss design, all that's done.
You got
so
it.
you just trim that fat, like time-wise, considerably.
Sure,
Okay, keep
absolutely.
going,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it like, let's say you're not using a pre-approved model. We can discuss that in a second as well too. But after all of that paperwork's put together, you go into the city, and again, they have 10 business days after you submit a full package to respond. My experience has been it's never usually 2 weeks. There's usually some sort of comment that comes back if it's not pre-approved, right? And then, you know, everybody's got to justify their existence, and everybody's got to justify their paycheck. And then after that's done, you'll get your approval, and you can move on to actually start the work. Usually to build an ARU, I mean, you're building a house, right? So you have to expect the same kind of timelines. It's a smaller build, anywhere from 2 to 3 months up to 4 to 6 months, depending on the type of construction that you're doing. That's pretty standard to expect for something like that. Now, pre-approved models, that's the great thing about it. So we've cut a whole pile of that out.
Right.
I mean, there is some planning aspects of how this is going to situate on this specific lot, but all of the process of getting the HVAC together, getting the trusses together, getting the pad figured out and engineered, all of the
Even the electrical, like, where every outlet and
it's
every
all
switch is.
sorted out ahead of time, right? So it's drop it, it's to the point where it's like doing subdivision builds, where this is the lot, we're using B model, away
That's
you go,
amazing.
right?
Yeah.
So that is a huge time saving. And again, working with companies like Enzo and Cellfield Construction, because we've got these pre-approved models, they're reproducing the same stuff over and over again. They've developed it. We've developed it in such a way that you've got about 3 different finishes on the outside of siding, 3 different types of stone vinyl siding that can go on it, 3 different types of kitchens, 3 different types of countertops. So you've got the ability to do like 100 different variations. You could drop 15 of these side by side and never have one look exactly the same, even though they're the exact same unit. So it makes it a lot easier for turnaround and being able to construct it super fast as well.
The next question I think out of everyone's mouth would be, that's all great, but how much do these really cost? What's this really going to cost me? All in.
Yeah. $1 million. No, honestly, so the 1-bedroom sort of studio type model that we have there is supposed to be around $326,000. Your 1.5 model is around $375,000, and then your 2-bedroom model is about $425,000. When you factor in what that actually looks like per square foot, you're usually looking at somewhere around $400 to $420 a square foot, basically, which is pretty standard for when you're getting into something like that.
And that's decent level of finish, I would imagine, too.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Now, I mean, there's things to consider, because obviously if you step outside of those and go into more of a custom model, you want something that's 2 stories, you want something that has a basement to it. Those are all additional costs that you have to look at doing as well, too. This is slab on grade. It has everything that you could possibly need to make it a living space for you. It's just turnkey, right? Nice and easy.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So if someone's interested in exploring ARU options, how do they get in touch with you? How do they get in front of you?
How do they get in front of me?
How do they get the joy?
How do they get the pleasure?
Sitting with you.
Just
staring at that beer.
The tractor beam of that beer, just wanting to get closer and closer to it.
Worried as if you notice Tyler's chair getting a little bit closer.
I have.
It's not me. It's the magnetic pull to that beer.
I thought he was just getting warmer from the fire, but apparently not.
No, so I mean, obviously the easiest way to get in contact with me is either through my cell number. It's always available. It's always on. Please don't call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. But that's the easiest way: 289-355-4402, or via email through my website. So info@HOM. That's home without an E. design.ca. Those are usually the 2 easiest ways that people get in contact with me. I get a lot of referrals and connections with people like yourself, where they have contacted their real estate agent, or they're thinking about doing this or thinking about buying a property, and so I get brought along for the process, and we'll work with them at that point. Again, like I said earlier, looking at the property, seeing what's a potential, even doing a quick site sketch so we can see where things could actually fit on that property for them, and see if that works for them.
That's awesome. I would encourage anyone who's watching this or has questions that we didn't cover to contact us or Clinton directly, and he's an incredible resource. Everyone I know that's worked with him is super impressed. He agreed to do a podcast with us today. I mean, his rider was ridiculous, the amount of different things he wanted for beverages and fresh fruit and stuff, but we got him sorted.
I mean, you guys got me grapes at least.
I didn't know there was that many different types of cheeses.
I know. It's crazy.
Well,
thank you for your time. It's been great having you here for sure.
100%. And thanks for taking the time to talk to us, because A.D.Us and ARUs we're hearing more and more about them. And Tyler, from your standpoint, I guess in closing, what do you think? What's your opinion on ARUs and the future of real estate in this area?
Well, again, I go back to, there's a lot of media about affordability and housing crisis and people not being able to get into the market. And we had a previous podcast about the dream of home ownership being dead. Well, this is a prime example of people getting creative, and not just people, but municipalities, the province getting creative and saying, yeah, we have a problem here. We've got great land and resources and infrastructure. Why don't we utilize what we have? We don't need to create more subdivisions necessarily, because servicing those is huge infrastructure-wise. So let's work with what we have. So I think the program is amazing. I think there's a great way to do them tastefully, so you're not upsetting your neighbor, and you add value to not only your property but the community. And with sort of boutique sort of turnkey services like this, the ease of doing it is, it's not an intimidating thing. It can be a fun process, but at the end of the day, everyone wins, I think. So I think they're fantastic. And I'm curious to see, like we've already mentioned that some municipalities, Kawartha Lakes, for example, is already increasing the density to 4 units.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, obviously places like Toronto, that's expected. You know, we've got 4+1, potentially 5+1 in the next little while that's coming down. But I was really amazed to see places like Belleville and the city of Kawartha Lakes that are already picking up on the idea that, okay, at what point do you max out the main house? What can we do with some of these additional structures? And let's get creative about this now and thinking about, you know, additional housing.
And those aren't necessarily urban properties. I mean, we're seeing that on rural development, you know, on rural properties that are serviced by well and septic. So it's not exclusively in town where this is happening. It's happening sort of everywhere.
No, that's a whole nother topic as well too.
Episode 2.
Episode
with
2. No, we were actually doing one right now in Ajax where it's exactly that. So it's a household agricultural setting, agricultural zoning, and we have 3 units going into the primary building plus the garage is being converted. Now, there's other things to consider now because, again, we don't have sanitary and water hookups. Everything's got to be done on site. You've got to have land for it, for sure. But when you're in a rural setting, these are possibilities as well, too.
Yeah. Well, we've really enjoyed chatting with you. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I think people are going to learn a lot from this. So thank you so much for joining us today. And any final words?
Clint Edwards, Tyler Smith, I'm Jake Van Haverbeck. Thanks for tuning in to episode 2 of the Helter Shelter podcast. We will see you down the road.